Hi, this is Mary Baca with Remotely Unique, coming to you from Albuquerque, New Mexico on this fine fall day. I love the fall. It makes me think of balloons, hot air balloons. Some of you aren't from New Mexico, but here in New Mexico, we are so lucky because we have hot air balloons that we can see even on our way into work and things like that. I think sometimes we kind of take it for granted. But we have a guest in the studio today who's dually involved with Remotely Unique, Mike Suarez. He is our show's producer, and he's also a balloon pilot. So I'm so excited that I was able to twist his arm into talking to us today because, Mike, a lot of people don't realize like what it even takes to get a balloon up in the air. You know, what all goes into that, or what certain like qualifications or licensing goes into that. And so that's what I guess first I'd like to start with. Well, first of all, welcome to the show on this end of things.
Thank you. It's a different viewpoint, but it'll be fun.
What is a crew? I mean, I have my assumptions and limited knowledge, but what's a balloon crew?
So basically, in terms of flying a balloon, you usually have about 4 to 6 people involved for a normal sized balloon. You've got the pilot, obviously, and then you have a whole ground crew, which is probably what you're talking about, that stays, helps set up the balloon, chases a balloon, puts it away. And usually you would have about 4 people doing that, kind of maneuvering around the balloon and focused on different aspects getting it set up when you're taking
Like
off.
what aspects?
So when setting up I'll start from the very beginning. Setting up a balloon, usually you have the basket, which is the bottom part. It's usually made out of wicker. Some of them are now made out of titanium, and they're getting a little fancy, but most are still made out of wicker. And then you have the envelope, which is the balloon part of the balloon.
Okay.
Which weighs about 300 pounds. And so you need some people to help set it out, drag it out, pull it open, hold it open, and get it set up to go. You also have a fan, an inflator fan, which is blowing cold air into that envelope to have it expand more before you heat it up. That way you're heating up a full balloon and not burning the fabric. You're heating up the air as opposed to the balloon.
This is going to sound, this is going to sound really naive because I am naive about it. But so you start off with cold air and it's the hot air that you blow into it that makes it rise and expand?
Correct. You're heating up the air that's already in there.
Okay.
So there are different size balloons. Here in Albuquerque, because we're about a mile up, you need a little bit bigger of a balloon than if you were flying at sea level. Most of the ones here are about 77,000 cubic feet, all the way up to some of the bigger ride balloons that you see in the air are close to 250,000 square feet.
Square feet?
Square feet,
Holy
which
cow.
for the viewers, for you, a square foot, a good rule of thumb is a basketball. So the smaller balloons are about 77,000 basketballs worth of hot air, and the bigger ones are 250,000, which is huge.
And where do they fly those?
You'll see them around here. They're usually the commercial ride ones that have more people. They can fly about typically 10 to 12 passengers is a good kind of rule of thumb for the fall here in Albuquerque.
Now, and does it matter, it's going to sound like a crazy question, does it matter what the people weigh, like how many people you can have on the balloon?
It actually does.
Okay.
It is a combination of different effects. Depending on the temperature that it is outside, affects the amount of weight that the balloon can lift up. So on coldest temperature outside, lowest altitude is when the balloon can fly the most weight.
Oh, interesting.
So if you were by the sea level in Houston, let's say, and it was very cold, you'd be able to fly quite a bit more than if you were in Colorado during the summer.
Oh, wow.
And each balloon kind of has its own specifications of how much weight it can lift, at what temperatures, and there's a nice big math chart that describes all that.
So does a pilot I mean, a pilot knows beforehand who they're going to fly, but do they always know like that missing information, like the distribution weight or things like that, or not necessarily?
We will know our balloons that we're flying, what they're capable of. And we'll know, give or take, how much weight you can take up on that day. We'll also leave quite a bit of a safety margin just in case. We don't need to necessarily know how many breakfast burritos a passenger ate on his way in, but we know we can fly 2 average-sized adults on a day that it is a certain temperature outside.
Interesting.
Or during the summer, we know we can fly quite a bit less. We might be flying 1 adult and 1 child, knowing that the child weighs drastically less than the adult.
So temperature really has a big impact besides the obvious.
Correct.
Like besides that, it's a good flying day or not. Like
the 2 main things that affect, again, the how long you can fly and how much weight you can fly are temperature and the altitude that you're at.
Oh, wow. I never knew that.
Which is partly why Albuquerque, our temperature is very ideal, and we're not at that high of an altitude that we can fly pretty much year-round most balloons.
Nice, yeah. So that's why we're kind of like the balloon hub, one of the balloon hubs. What are the other places that, is there a balloon fiesta anywhere else?
There are quite a few balloon events around the U.S., and there are 2 or 3 huge balloon fiestas around the world. There's one down in Mexico, in Leon, Mexico, which is usually towards the beginning of November, so about a month after our balloon fiesta. And then there is a large event in Europe, but I don't believe I know when it is. I want to say it's kind of in the spring.
Is it bigger than ours?
It is not. Ours is the largest currently. I don't know with the pandemic where things have changed, but ours has been the largest one for a while. We've gone back and forth with the one in Europe, with the one in Mexico being the 3rd largest for quite a few years now.
Well, that's pretty neat, like that we're, the largest, at least at this point. How many, and of course we don't know with the pandemic what this year is going to be like, right? But how many usually fly?
A typical, in the last probably 10 years or so, there's been about 500 balloons, 520 balloons during Balloon Fiesta.
And not necessarily on day one.
Correct. They vary during Balloon Fiesta. We've got some days that are more focused on the special shapes, and so they will fly those days, but maybe not on the weekend or vice versa. And so, but about 520 are what's registered, and we'll fly at least a few days during Balloon Fiesta.
And how is takeoff regulated? Like, how's that organized?
Very, very, very well organized. There are a whole slew of volunteers that help regulate the takeoffs at Balloon Fiesta. They wear kind of the umpire referee clothing, and they're called zebras. There are flight directors. They make sure and coordinate amongst each other that certain rows, if you've been to Balloon Fiesta Park, there's 22 columns, I believe, and about 15 rows. And each row, each square has about 3 to 4 balloons during Balloon Fiesta. The zebras, which is what we call the flight officials, help to regulate and determine which ones are going to go first, when they're allowed to take off. And so it's a kind of ballet in the air, almost.
Yeah, it would really have to be choreographed.
It's
really
very well
because
regulated.
People
they're in constant communication. What looks like organized chaos from the ground is very well regulated and organized.
Those guys, they probably men and women.
Yep.
They probably have been doing that a long time.
There are some that are multi-generational families that have been helping direct it.
Oh, wow.
That have had their kids have come up in training, have been zebras in trainings is what we call them, and they usually, I believe, have to do it for 2 years as kind of zebras in training assistants before they can do it on their own. And even with that, they're still very well directed, and it's a whole experience seeing it on that end too.
Now, do they get paid or is it volunteer?
They're volunteers.
Wow.
Pretty much every aspect of Balloon Fiesta is run by volunteers. From the catering, the setting up and disassembling of some of the event tents to pretty much everything is volunteer organized.
So where does the money that is made go to?
It goes to paying for propane for the pilots, to upkeep of Balloon Fiesta Field. There's a whole slew of costs and the equipment that is used during it. It turns into basically its small little city for 10 days in October every year. And so it's all of those it's actually, there is a Balloon Fiesta is a nonprofit organization. And so all the money goes through that and is accounted for.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
They have their own board of directors and everything. Wow. That I'm not quite as knowledgeable about all the intricacies, but it's a 501c3.
It's like a real formal thing from the logistical
They
part.
have their offices that they begin working on the following year's Fiesta about a week after Fiesta ends.
Wow. Oh, yeah.
The
I bet it
logistics
takes a lot of planning.
Are ridiculous. There's usually, I want to say the last couple of years, close to 1 million visitors that go in and out.
Wow.
Some of those go every day, so it's not necessarily 1 million people, but
yeah, but that's
still a huge amount.
I know some years, I don't remember which ones, like people have come and they haven't been able to see not even one balloon take off. Like if it's really, really windy. There was 1 or 2 years like that.
The last couple of years, we've been very lucky and have flown about 7 to 9 out of the 10 days with the flights in the morning, and then we've got balloon glows in the evening.
That's fun to see.
Those are very unique and fun for everybody. The pilots love the experience of having the spectators get up close, and it's a very unique experience that most people will never, unless they come to Albuquerque, they might see hot air balloons on TV or in pictures, but to be almost the distance that I am from you to one while they're inflating and all that is magnificent.
Yeah, it is really cool to watch. I like the balloon glows. In the morning, sometimes it's so doggone cold, you know?
It is. It
can
is
be
very
really
cold.
chilly.
Some hot coffee in the morning is very useful.
Maybe, I wonder if this year if it'll be so cold, because we're now, when is it? The October?
We are 1 week away.
Wow. So maybe it won't be as cold, because it hasn't been super chilly in the morning. I mean, chilly, but not like frigid.
It's getting there. Usually here in Albuquerque, it seems to rain during the state fair, which was, I believe, last week it ended, and then it starts cooling down. So hopefully it cools down a little bit more this next week so that we've got quite a few days of flying.
And the frigid temperatures, do those help?
So, kind of like I mentioned, they allow us to fly for longer.
Oh.
The colder weather lets us fly for longer. It lets some of the smaller balloons fly for a bit longer than they would if it was hot.
And what's like a typical trip time?
Again, it depends on the temperature, how many people they're flying, but for the most part, most pilots try and fly for about an hour. That gets a nice little flight. You get to travel quite a bit. You get to hopefully fly by the river, get a couple different scenic views and whatnot, and then land.
I know some of the pictures people take for the Balloon Fiesta, photographers, oh my gosh, they're like breathtaking, some of those pictures. Just like going over the Rio Grande, even though we don't have a ton of water, like photographers make it look amazing, regardless.
What's interesting, usually every year on the news, you'll see some kayakers down the river that take some very interesting kind of unique photos from the river of them 5 feet from a balloon, which is a blast.
Yeah, it's very exciting. They always have really great food, good breakfast burritos. I mean, it's like a really great, when you say fiesta, it is. It's this huge party,
And it's a very nice reunion. Some of the pilots that don't live in Albuquerque will see each other and have known each other for 40 years and see each other for that week at Fiesta. And it's kind of a big class reunion almost.
That's cool. I know all the news channels, too, get all involved and have their crews go and cover it. And, it's like a big deal here. So I feel really fortunate to be from here and to experience that, because some people that I've talked to, they're like, oh, my gosh, how amazing. And I can just drive up the road and go watch it, or take the bus. That's nice, to just take the bus and be driven in.
Or kind of like you said, on your way into work, you just happen to glance up and you see 200 balloons.
It's beautiful, yeah. I mean, it's amazing. What is it like to fly on a balloon? I know you and I were talking one time, and I was like, I don't know, I'm afraid of heights.
It surprisingly is very peaceful. Since you're going with the wind, regardless of what speed you're going, you don't notice the speed. So you're literally just floating along very, very, to me, it's very zen, very spiritual, very relaxing.
So you don't know, you're not afraid of heights, though.
I'm afraid of edges, which is a very interesting topic. There's quite a few pilots that I know of that, again, are very similarly afraid of edges. But in a balloon, since we're enclosed, we can go up almost a mile and be completely fine.
That's good to know for those people that listen to this that are interested in flying, but like me, I don't know, I'm so afraid of heights. How would I do on that?
No, it's a very different experience than I kind of joked around. I don't like being on a ladder, but I'm completely fine quite a bit higher up. Wow. So it's a very unique experience, and it's definitely something people should not necessarily assume that they will not enjoy.
Yeah, I think the height is, would hold a lot of people back. So when you told me that time, I was like, well, that's kind of cool. That probably wouldn't be a big deal for me, and a lot of people who are afraid of heights, probably wouldn't be fazed by the height because they go high.
They do.
And then how does a pilot control the balloon once you're up in the air?
We have a steering wheel. No, not quite. There's two things that we can control as pilots. We can put heat up into the balloon so it'll go up, or we can let heat out and it'll go down. However, you're probably saying, hey, I see balloons go different directions. We're following the winds.
Oh, okay.
So depending where the winds are going, we want to find that layer, and we'll go up to be able to go east and follow that wind, or maybe go down a little bit further to go south, or we figure out where the winds are going in the direction we want to go. Since we can't move in that direction, we need to find a ride that pushes us in that direction. And
how do you steer it, for lack of a better word?
We go up and down.
That's it? Wow. So what about is that how you stay away from other balloons too, or does that happen where, two might almost collide, or that doesn't really happen?
Well, since we're being pushed by the winds, there's no way that the winds can be going opposite directions. So as long as we stay at a different level, we're always going to be going in different
That's interesting itself, huh?
All the winds are kind of one-way roads, so we just try and figure out what road we want to take.
And so if you manipulate the balloon to where you drop down, you can always raise it again.
Correct.
If you drop down for some reason.
Correct. Huh. Correct. We can always add more heat to go back up and lessen the heat to go back down.
And so how much experience should a balloon pilot have, or needs to have, is required to have before they can fly?
So ballooning is actually regulated by the FAA, just like the Boeing 747s that you take from the Sunport here. And there is a whole stack of regulations that describes how much training, what type of training, who can train you, and it's basically as regulated as most airplanes that people think of.
Wow. Wow. So what are
And then as well, every balloon is regulated. It's an aircraft just like a Cessna or a Boeing or any other.
so do they have to be like inspected and stuff, or
They have to be registered. They have the same N number, which you'll see on your Southwest Airlines flights and whatnot. They have to be registered with the FAA, and then they have to be inspected. Typically, either every 100 hours of flight or once a year, whichever comes first.
interesting? And how many hours? Because I think you and I talked about this before. Like, how many hours do you have to have in before you can fly as a pilot?
To be a pilot, you have to have had that training that's regulated. You have to pass a written test, an oral test, and a practical test. And so typically training will consist of about 15 to 20 hours of flight time, as well as tons of study time on the ground, and however much time you need to be able to have good knowledge of that written practical stuff.
That's interesting too. So 20 some hours, so like 20 some flights.
20 some flights.
And do you feel like that's sufficient?
I think it is, because again, you are doing a ton of other stuff before you even get into the air. That's just 20 hours of actual time in the air.
Oh, like crewing and things like that, getting
And
to
just
know.
the knowledge, the regulations, there is a ton of knowledge, airport operations, all kinds of.
And the FAA does all of that, like they're the ones that administer the test and all of that?
They come up with the test. I believe it's administered by a private place, just like the SATs now are, and all that stuff. But they go over the test. They're the ones that come up with the questions.
I think that's important for people to know, because I think just lay people, don't maybe realize that it's an actual profession, and I would call it a profession. Would you? I mean, it's a sport.
For sure.
But,
there are quite a few people that make their living as balloon pilots, just like any other type of pilot.
By charging people who ride?
People for rides, by using their balloons as advertisements. Everybody knows the little Remax balloon that flies around, and now it's a profession, kind of like you mentioned, and it's regulated just like any other type of pilot, any other type of aircraft.
Yeah, and for people to not think that, a pilot just gets in a balloon and flies.
No, here in Albuquerque, kind of like you mentioned, we're so spoiled. We think, oh, they just set up something, go up in there and fly. No, it's a lot more organized and regulated than most people think.
That's good to know. It's admirable too, because you'd have to really, and I know you do, you'd have to really love it. I know you love it. I know that time is really precious for you, and you really value that and look forward to it. Why? What's that like? What does it do for you?
It's indescribable. I joke with some friends. Everybody has their hobbies. The one thing that I love most about ballooning is you can't do it by yourself. You have to share that joy with your crew, with your passengers, with the people when you land that come up to a balloon and say, hey, I want to take a picture. The little kids that walk up and have a smile from ear to ear. That's something that at least I have never seen in any other hobby or passion or anything like that. And it just brings joy to people.
Yeah, it really does. People, when you go to the balloon fiesta, even not that, like during the balloon fiesta or not even during that time, and you see people pulled over at the side of the road, taking pictures, it's amazing what it does to a person to see a balloon, whether it's, down on the ground or up in the air.
It's very It's almost like a fantasy. It's very magical.
Uh-huh. Huh. I'm going to have to go check one out sometime.
For sure.
And what are the costs of a balloon flight about? I know probably during the balloon fiesta more. Right?
It varies, and it depends on if you're flying by yourself with just a pilot.
Okay.
So it completely varies. There's not kind of a rule of thumb.
So, like, if you go with a group of people, is it more cost effective?
It's going to be more cost effective, but in my opinion, it's less fun.
I know, yeah.
It's similar to a tour. The benefit would be just the more one-on-one personal experience, I would think, would be more
Yeah, and then
enjoyable.
you can ask questions, and yeah.
Or
'Cause I mean-
or come out and crew and become part of the family.
That's what I hear too. I'm glad you said that. The balloon people I've known, it is like a family, you know, from what I've seen and heard. You guys are like a family. You become like a family.
It is.
Almost like I see in first responders.
It very much is. It's a very close-knit family. We all are there for each other, and we love sharing that joy, that magic with other people.
I think that's really cool. For sure. What was it like last year to not have Balloon Fiesta?
It was very different. We still had a sort of event. I don't know if you remember the first weekend, quite a few of the local pilots flew first responders, like you mentioned, and some of the essential workers to thank them for what they had been doing during the pandemic, and kind of made a smaller token of appreciation for what they had done.
I don't remember, but that's nice.
And so we flew quite a few first responders, teachers.
I do, yeah.
All sorts of those to again show a small token for what they had been doing at that time.
So you couldn't have the
4 months.
huge event.
Correct.
But you still had a smaller and really meaningful event.
And again,
That's
it brought
nice.
joy to all of them. They were very thankful. It was a small shining moment.
Yeah. What's that that commercial you showed me was amazing. Tell me about that. I forget who it was for, the commercial you were a part of making.
We had Albuquerque in New Mexico has a professional soccer team, New Mexico United, that recently partnered up with New Mexico True, which showcases, it's part of the New Mexico Tourism Bureau, Tourism Office. And so they wanted to when they launched their sponsorship, bring about a video that showed kind of what makes New Mexico, New Mexico. And so, of course, ballooning, since we are the balloon capital of the world, played a role in it. And we had some soccer players playing soccer inside of a balloon, which is, if that doesn't scream New Mexico.
I know. That was an amazing commercial. I don't think I ever saw it on TV, but you showed it to me, and I was like, wow, like just the photography and everything on it was just amazing.
They show it during the soccer games and
okay.
And have a couple other things like that. And I believe New Mexico True has shown it off in some of their events as well.
Very cool. What would be something that you think the public should know about ballooning or about balloons? Just
I could go on for hours about that, but I think that the main thing that hopefully comes across is come out and experience it.
Yeah.
If it's Balloon Fiesta and you're coming in from out of town, if you're here, talk to a couple of people, come out to Balloon Fiesta, meet some of the local pilots, have them invite you to come out at another time and just get involved in it.
How do you approach a balloon pilot? So they don't care if you approach them? I'm sure timing. Like
During Balloon Fiesta, the field, I don't know the details for this year, but the field is wide open. You can come up to them and the crew will love talking to you. It's they will welcome you with open arms. They might even toss you in the basket if you're not looking.
Nice. So they're very open to that.
Everybody's open.
Love it.
Kind of like you mentioned, it's one big family and we're always welcoming.
That's nice. I hope there's a good turnout. I bet there will be. Just coming out of the pandemic, I bet people will come from all over, hopefully. That's what typically happens, so I hope that happens. I know that I'll be going at some point.
The latest word that I've heard is that there will be about 35 international pilots as well. So there's people coming in from all over the world still.
Wow, nice. So you're looking forward to that. That occupies a lot of your time, huh, for Balloon Fiesta?
It does. It does. It's a wonderful week, but it is probably 100 and something hour week.
Wow.
Easily. That I wouldn't trade for the world.
Crewing and flying and eating, drinking, and sleeping balloons for that time.
The sleeping, there's not quite as much of it that week, but we get our rest in.
Very nice. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. You can catch this segment, which is called Up, Up, and Away. How appropriate.
I like it.
On our YouTube channel, Remotely Unique, on our website, remotely-unique.com, on Spotify, iTunes, and Amazon Music. Thanks a lot, and until next time, take care of yourself and each other. Bye for now.